Good morning, everybody. And good afternoon in Europe. It's Pablo Zuanic, Cannabis Equity Analyst at Zuanic and Associates. Welcome, everyone. And we're very glad to have this panel today. We're going to discuss reform in Germany. We have three very notable speakers, Sascha Mielcarek, CEO of Canify AG, Stefan Fritsch, founder and CEO at Grünhorn, and we have Dr. Constantin Groeben, Managing Director and founder at Demecan. Welcome to all the three speakers.
Thank you. Thanks for having us, Paul.
Thanks.
So look, we'll start here first with an introduction from each one of you about your company, and then, of course, we'll delve into the details. So, Stefan, I'll start with you, an introduction about Grünhorn, please. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Stefan Fritsch, founder and CEO of the Grünhorn Group. We have two business units. Grünhorn, one of the largest platforms that connects patients to doctors and pharmacies. And then we have canymed, our wholesaler that sells to other pharmacies and imports our own brand products. And we've been EBITDA positive since April 2024.
That's great. Thank you. Sascha, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me. Sascha Mielcarek, CEO of Canify. Canify is a German-based operator operating basically in three business units. We do entertain GMP-certified manufacturing facility in the south of Germany, where we import in the meantime out of 11 countries raw cannabis and do manufacture it there. We do that for our own brand as well as for third-party clients. Second business unit, our own brand, one of the broadest medical portfolios in the European market. We do market dried flower, but also full spectrum and purified extracts, and lately launched a sublingual spray. And last but not least, to also occupy the last bit of the value chain, we also operate our own teleclinic, providing physician services to patients in need. And there we're doing everything in the European market other than cultivating cannabis.
Thank you, Sascha. Constantin, go ahead.
Thank you, Pablo. Thanks for having me. Yes, this is Constantin from Demecan. Demecan, that means Deutsches Medicinal Cannabis. I think we're one of the first and early movers in the German medical cannabis market. Founded the company back in 2017 when medical cannabis was legalized. Demecan is a cultivator of medical cannabis, but we have grown from just being a cultivator into manufacturer. We have our own lab services. We're importing, wholesaling, and distribution of medical cannabis straight to pharmacies, and even operate a SaaS solution for cannabis pharmacies in Germany. So by now, I'd say we're vertically integrated, do not run the clinic. So that part, Sascha, that's missing. You have that, at least with boots on the ground. We do have the cultivation in Germany, though.
That's good. Thank you. Constantin, I'll stay with you. Let's start about the potential new government, right? Chancellor Merz, what is that gap? Do we have a sense of what is that new government going to look like? And what could be the implications for reform in Germany? Pillar 2, Pillar 1.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we definitely have a new government. We will have a new government soon, and it will be led by Friedrich Merz. That is without a question. And now it pretty clearly looks like it's going to be a so-called Great Coalition again, Social Democrat and CDU-CSU Conservative Party government coalition. That is not by definition pro-cannabis coalition. It is, though, the type of coalition that legalized medical cannabis in the first place. So I'm not too worried about medical cannabis, right? There was some talks about rolling back the cannabis legalization, and that came from the conservative parties. That was mainly focused, though, on recreational cannabis. And I think it was also partly owed to the campaign noise and language that you hear during every campaigning. From the last couple of weeks, I haven't really heard much talk about cannabis. It seems like that topic has dropped off people's minds who are negotiating, which is, I guess, good for us. Downside being is that there's more important things to solve right now in the world and in Germany. And our politicians, I think, are doing the right thing with focusing on these things. So that said, in a nutshell, we were a bit nervous about a conservative-led government. We are not that nervous anymore, and definitely not for the medical cannabis part, which is, to this point, 95% of our business. We do some R&D, and we would like to also enter the Pillar 2, or at least some pilot projects. If they will happen, that is really doubtful, I would say, at this moment.
Thank you. Sascha, on the same topic.
Yeah, and very comparable statement, I guess. So as Constantin, we are not concerned about the medical market, maybe even the opposite. So as Constantin rightfully said, it was the Christian Democrats who actually started the medicinal cannabis market. There's even voices out of the Christian Democrats which are more progressive when it comes to medicinal regulations. If you were to be invested into Pillar 2, that might be a bit of a more concern. But again, we haven't heard anything right now. The not even in charge government will have more severe things to tackle than rolling back eventually any regulations around cannabis. Not concerned at all around medical cannabis, not knowing any details around eventual repercussions on clubs on Pillar 2. But anyway, as Canify, we were never meant to invest into that area. So we feel more of a tailwind than any concern.
Right. Before I go to Stefan, so Sascha, just on that point, so when we talk about Pillar 1, one thing is medical cannabis, but also Pillar 1 included decriminalization. It included home grow. It included the social clubs, right? Could there be some changes in those topics?
Well, I'm not a lawyer, not a politician, so I struggle a bit with giving you a concrete answer. But my reading is it would be very, very dangerous to roll back. There might be even people able to sue the government because they invested based on a regulation which was fair and public. So to just prohibit it now, I think is hardly possible at all. Plus, in my mind, it doesn't make much sense. Plus, again, it's not the most important topic to tackle for the new government. They have announced in their rallies, especially out of the ultra-conservative part, to attack some of the, let's say, reforms back in April. So there might be some activism to show that, but again, not in the short term and not with any repercussion on the current market dynamic.
Right. And Stefan, before I go to Stefan, Constantin, could they reverse? Could they put back cannabis, medical cannabis, on the narcotics list?
Yeah, they could do that, and there has been some discussion about that, but I don't think it's very likely that they will actually do that. So from all the discussions that I've had with any decision maker, it's quite clear that that was a necessary step taken to deschedule it, remove it from the narcotics regulation. And especially for us as a producer, as a cultivator in Germany, we had to cultivate under weird conditions, like basically a Fort Knox growing our cannabis in because of this narcotic regulation. And everybody is happy, including our local and regional administration, that we did this step away from this over bureaucracy, this over an unnecessary security. So I think this is not going to happen. It's not going to be a step back, but we have to monitor it closely.
And that's a good point. The bureaucracy, our regulatory board that we deal with, as a narcotic, you have to track every single milligram of that substance. And with dried flower, a lot of that is moisture. So over time, it decreases, which for bureaucrats is a lot of work. If you have a 10% loss in weight, that's something that you actually have to call the police for. But in cannabis, it's just the moisture that disappeared. So the bureaucracy behind it is way too much. And we recently had the minister president of Saxony visit our location. And we showed him all of the things that would change, all of the bureaucracy that is behind a narcotic. And he said, he was one of the bigger critics of the actual Kenji. So after we talked to him, he said he's definitely going to try within the party to make sure that it's separated in the talks, medical and recreational. So I also, with every politician that we've talked to or had visit us, that's kind of been the topic, that they don't really care about medical. They think medical is fine. They think it's great that the bureaucracy has kind of been decreased. And they definitely see its position in the medical market as something that's helping patients. So,
Stefan, I'll stay with you there. I know in a prior call, we talked about decriminalization, right? In the US, particularly in New York at the beginning, decriminalization resulted, in a lot of illegal shops opening up, unlicensed shops, right? How has decriminalization played out in Germany, in your opinion?
I mean, I wouldn't compare it to New York. New York's pretty crazy. I was there last year, and there's a ton of illegal shops. I mean, I wouldn't say that there's that many illegal operations happening in Germany. Germans are definitely a little more conservative. The authorities are definitely much stricter and harder on us. But obviously, there are a couple, and there are a couple cowboys in the industry kind of pushing the boundaries of the medical business. So. Definitely not on the same level as New York, but it's definitely been taken advantage of by some players.
Okay, but not as significant as New York. Okay.
No.
And in terms of, I know that here we are guessing in terms of what changes could happen, but restrictions on, and correct me if I'm wrong, restrictions on home grow, a rollback on social clubs in a way that would help the medical industry, I suppose. On the other hand, more controls on prescribing, telehealth, on potency, that would be a negative. But any quick thoughts on that, on what would be, positive changes and negative changes from a medical cannabis perspective? Whoever wants to jump in here.
Well, to slice things a bit. So in my view on the market, home grow, medical markets, and clubs are anyway kind of separate segments with separate customer groups. So honestly, I don't see much interlink. The clubs themselves had a bit of a rough start anyway, so there is not that many clubs so far. So we haven't really felt, I think, the impact of eventual more numerous clubs out there. But once again, I wouldn't see that so much as a threat for the medical market. It's just an alternative for a different customer group. And when it comes to telehealth, well, if you look at the German systems, I think we are one of the countries living in Stone Age times when it comes to digital healthcare. So there's certainly things to be learned. There's certainly loopholes which might be discussed, but in general, to have access to a digitally performed consultation on a cannabis medicine, I see as a very positive change, again, within certain frames and rules, and maybe some of these things have gone off board and might be tackled in the next months, which I would welcome, right? So, but I don't feel a need to completely roll back regulations or even talking about narcotic status again. And I'm also not talking to anybody wanting.
Thank you. Look, just a quick question for the three of you. I mean, to some extent, the result of the election had been expected, right? It wasn't a big surprise. But are you making any changes in the way you run your business because of a new government? I'll start with you, Constantin. Just a short answer.
No, we anticipated it. It was one of two options. We saw either a coalition with the Greens and the Conservatives or the Social Democrats and the Conservatives. So we anticipated that basically as of November when the whole thing happened and the traffic light coalition collapsed. So no, that really doesn't affect us that much. We do spend more time, I would say, now on the talks and on the discussions which are going on, but no dramatic changes.
Right. Stefan, on the same question?
Yeah, no dramatic changes. When we were working with narcotics, we had, I think, around 30 different safes that we had, lined up in a hallway. We brought all those to the basement. We haven't sold any of them. So I mean, we're definitely not going to sell them yet because you never know what'll happen. But in terms of any other changes, I don't think there's nothing that we're really considering because we also don't see it going back. But once we get the 100% okay, we'll start selling the safes. If anybody's interested.
All right, just send me an email. I have Stefan's email here. Sascha, the same question, quick answer.
No, same. No changes at all. Also, our expansion of our GMP facilities planned as a non-narcotic, but would also be a big investment to change that as the basic scenario has been under narcotic.
All right.
No changes at all.
Thank you. Look, I'm going to move the discussion now to the market growth in Germany. I'll start with you, Constantin. I mean, obviously, there's no precise numbers, right? We have the import numbers. We have the exports from Canada. Imports grew between the first quarter and the fourth quarter by almost 4 times, right? From 8 tons to 31 tons. Is that an indication of market growth, or is it, you know, back in the day, I think 60% of imports were really sold to pharmacies. Is that lower now? You know, what are the factors driving that growth? Your thoughts on that topic, Constantin, in terms of current market growth?
I think you mentioned the exact right numbers that everybody looks at, the import numbers that went from 8 to 31, and that number just came out last week, I think. And I think the number is still growing and it's still rising. This market is on a constant growth that is overwhelming. And we Germans, we tend to be very careful people. We're always ready for failure. We have a plan B. We prepare for failure. We should now be ready to success. It's really going right now. And I think you got to run fast and you got to keep pace with that growth. And that is the challenge right now, because it's really there. And I think it's going to sustain for definitely quite a few more quarters longer, because the market is well, you know, far away from being saturated, in my view. How much of that imported quantity was actually sold? Hard to say. We don't have the data. Because we do a lot of processing from GACP imported flour, we know it takes between 6 to 10 weeks of flour to be processed and then actually enter the market and enter the pharmacy. So there's definitely a bit of a, you know, a delay in when it enters the pharmacy from the time it was imported. We have a very small number of out of specification product from the product that we import ourselves. The average number, I would say a fair rule of thumb could be like 20%. But that's just, again, that's just guessing.
No, that's good. Thank you. Sascha, on the same question.
No, I absolutely agree. So we even grew stronger than the imports grew. So I would agree that they represent the growth numbers. They might even be a bit shy. I also like Constantin's comment on the shy Germans always preparing for failure. And I think one reason for the big Q4 numbers is that companies are now preparing for success. So there might also be some stocking effects. There might be, let's say, we all faced some supply challenges in Q4 of 2024 to make sure we can supply against the demand. So we are now getting bigger with our import tickets, which you see in Q4. But it's absolutely reflecting the market growth. We don't see any slowdown and we don't see any reason to slow down. I think the German market is showing what was promised years ago, and we are preparing for that.
Stefan, on the same question. Yeah, I mean, I'm going last, so I'm pretty much just agreeing with what you guys said. Definitely, we had over 450% growth in our wholesale sales. Our pharmacy with almost 100% growth. Obviously, the pharmacy is a little harder to scale, just because it's single orders that have to go out. The wholesale is pallets. But yeah, we definitely see massive growth since the beginning of the legalization. I'm surprised nobody's talking about oversupply in this group. It's something that I've talked about with a lot of manufacturers. I think the two of you have done a good job managing the business, and I think you guys see it very realistically. But I also think there are some players that maybe missed out in the summer and maybe even Q4 that are over importing and potentially importing too much for them to sell in the next coming months. I've talked to some of the other manufacturers, and they everybody's kind of cautiously waiting for the moment that somebody bought too much and starts to decrease prices.
But on that point, Stefan, you're not seeing that dumping yet, or people pushing prices down yet, although they might have imported a lot.
Oh, well, there's that definitely already started to happen. There's a couple, but there's also a couple of other reasons for that. First of all, the rise of price comparison sites has definitely started to put price pressure on different products. The fact that prescriptions no longer costs over 150 euros has kind of decreased, and the complexity decreased. So the price per prescription has decreased to under 20 euros, most of them under 10. So we definitely see drops in price. There's also a fully new segment that we didn't have before the legalization, which is the ultra cheap segment of cannabis. I mean, there's companies that didn't even exist in 2023 that are doing multiple tons per month, just because they've gone into the ultra cheap segment. So there's, I mean, those effects have nothing to do with with any kind of supply issues. We just have heard from a couple of manufacturers that there's one or two players that have missed out on the sales growth and are trying to compensate with more sales in 2025.
I mean, Stefan, I'll stay with you, but in terms of, I know that there are barriers to entry and not so easy for newcomers, but like you said, are you seeing more importers set up, more distributors set up, more people approaching you to sell on your site, or the market remains pretty consolidated in that sense?
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest rise is in teleclinics. I think there's a new teleclinic every week. But there's also a lot of new importers that are trying to get into the market. I live in Switzerland. Switzerland has a very, very large CBD market. They export over 400 tons. And it seems like every single grower in Switzerland, suddenly got the idea to start exporting into Germany, but not CBD, but THC, medical cannabis. So there's still a lot of new companies coming into the market on the supply side.
Look, I want to stay on the topic of market growth. I mean, Constantin, you use the term keeping pace with growth. I mean, talk about the challenges. Is it just supply chain challenges or other challenges also that you face in that sense?
Yeah, it's a supply chain, and it's kind of difficult to ramp up the your imports if you want to stay true to your quality requirements. Usually the people that we worked for, like I'm talking about the imported product now, like the people we worked with, they have a certain capacity, and they can grow that maybe 20, 30, 40%, but not really quadruple it, and keep the quality at pace, right? And then that means you need to find other cultivators that still fit into your product portfolio. And I think Stefan mentioned a great point here. It's a new segment, the ultra cheap that appeared, but just in general, like the segmentation of different products has kind of started to kick off. We now do see a differentiation more about like different premium product. What does premium really mean? We see some mids, we see some, the cheaper ones, ultra cheap. And it's a very interesting time to be in, to just to look at the different products, and you really understand cannabis flower is not like cannabis flower, and it starts with how it's grown. So I think that's a challenge on the import side. For us in particular, we decided fairly quickly after the legalization, once the quota was lifted that had been imposed on us by BfArM before, that we would like ramp up our own cultivation, and we want to double our own cultivation. And we want to double it from 2-ton annual capacity to 4.2 tons, right? And we thought that's a lot, but giving the recent numbers, that's still far away from even covering like, tiny pieces of the German demand. And I'm a strong advocate to say like more of the cannabis consumed or like prescribed in Germany should come from German growers. And unfortunately, I haven't really seen many others that have entered into the cultivation sphere. And I don't think that's because of the prices and the costs, but it's really about the bureaucracy that we still face in Germany if you want to set up a cultivation or manufacturing here.
Right. So, Sascha, same question for you. Challenges keeping pace with growth. And also, when we talk about market growth, is it just mostly the cash payer segment, or are you also seeing growth in the reimbursed channel based on what you see?
Well, to answer your last question first, so we see the normal growth, which always has been a very satisfying and dynamic growth before the changes on 1st of April. So also the reimbursed segment is growing, but definitely what is outpacing all other segments is the self-payer segment and the dry flower segment, and that's the one keeping us busy these days. Talking about challenges, well, I think it's a technical challenge, right? So if you want to open your supplier network, get higher volumes, well, as a company, you have a working capital challenge, which if you're in hyper growth is a known challenge. You have to serve it, you have to manage it. And then between selecting a good supplier, auditing him, qualifying him, reporting him to your authorities, get him approved, put the first order, get the first product in, you simply have a delay of 6 to 8 months. So from the decision till your first supply, you have a natural delay. And I think we all expanded our network, and the Q4 numbers are talking about those, right? So you have a time delay, you have a working capital challenge, and that's what kept us busy the last months.
Thank you. Look, I wanna stay on the topic of market structure. We'll delve into more detail into each company in a bit. Stefan, in terms of market structure, how concentrated are scripts? I mean, are they coming from just a few clinics, a few doctors? What percent of scripts are via telehealth versus in person? Is the market even more concentrated now across a few pharmacies, or is it more fragmented? Just comments on that side of the end in terms of scripts and pharmacies.
Yeah, I mean, there was a massive growth in teleclinics, really on the 1st of April. It was from one day to the other. It was Easter. I'll never forget. I was with my family, and my IT team called me on Easter Sunday or Easter Monday, and they were like, "We don't know what to do. We have 2,000 orders that came out of nowhere, and we don't even know if they're qualified orders. So we had to." Involve a bunch of lawyers and everything. So there's a lot of growth coming from teleclinics. I would say it's currently 60% teleclinics, 40% doctors in practices. And I mean the amount of doctors are also growing every single month. I mean ever since the 1st of April, but it's definitely not growing as fast as the teleclinic sales are growing.
Right. And on the same topic, Stefan, regarding pharmacies, are you seeing more competition, less? I mean, I would have thought that those type of challenges are probably bigger for a smaller mom and pop shop pharmacy. For someone like yourself, you can handle it better. So that should lead to more concentration, right? But I'm hearing that there's more online pharmacies coming up. So help me connect those 2 points there.
Yeah, I think there was a massive boom when it dropped out as a narcotic. Because as a narcotic, the pharmacy, there's some pharmacies that absolutely want to limit the amount of narcotics that they have in the pharmacy. They don't have the room for it. You need a safe. They don't have they don't want to do all the work with all the paperwork. So I think there's a lot of pharmacies that were kind of watching cannabis on the sidelines and waiting for it to no longer be a narcotic, so that they could do this business because they didn't have the space. We saw massive growth kind of over the summer, and then it started to kind of plateau a little bit since then. So, I mean, the competition, I think, is now in a phase where all of these pharmacies that have joined cannabis now need to begin, scaling up their production in order to increase growth, which is also why I think, an oversupply might happen, just because there's a lot of product being imported, and the growth won't be as strong as over the summer when all of these new players started coming into the market. Now the ones that are in the market need to figure out how to double and triple their sales.
Right. And Sascha and Constantin, just staying on the market structure questions, what are the trends? What trends are you seeing? Are people looking for more potency? Are any specific brands that are doing very well? Country of origin, does that matter? We talked about pricing a bit. If you can touch on that. And then the second question, to your supplier network or to potential exporters out there in Canada or other parts of the world that are looking to enter Germany, what type of advice or message would you have for them? I mean, at the end of the day, they can represent a partnership as well as competition, but I know it's a two-part question. Sascha, I'll start with you.
The market is changing. Let's say when 12 months ago, potency was the only king, I think we have become a bit more diversified, and people are looking on more than just the potency claims. Also, people understood that potency might more often be a lab result than actually talking about the quality of the product. So we see a bit of more sophisticated, let's say, look on the product. That also changes a bit the demand in terms of export countries, because countries, not all suppliers in all countries are the same, but let's say there is countries with a bit more legacy of crafting and producing product which have a different premium level than others. And you see also these suppliers, let's say, being more successful. Then, as Constantin alluded to and Stefan alluded to, we have, I wouldn't call it the hyper cheap, but let's say the value segment is the one being most dynamic. I think I'm not inventing the comparison to wine. If you look at the wine market, 5 to 10% are actually premium product everybody talks about, but 90% are sold in the cheap groceries. And that's a bit what we see commoditizing the cannabis market as well, right? So the music and the volumes are played in the rather, let's say, economic segments, let's put it that way. To everybody, let's say, cultivate cannabis, and Constantin is the only of us doing it in Germany. Let's say equation of quality versus price versus sustainability. So whomever wants to supply into Germany and want to be successful needs to have a sufficient, if not premium quality at a price which can be afforded by the German buying system, and needs to sustain that supply because otherwise we have spot sales which at the very end are not successful. Plus, let's not forget, even if it commoditizes, we still talk medicinal market. We still talk patients. Patients will have a cultivar they are successful with in their disease, and they have a right of getting it sustainable. So this is still not a recreational market, even though many people feel it is, right? So it is still a medical market in a certain range.
Yeah, Constantin, the same question for you in terms of product trends.
Yeah, maybe focusing on one of the aspects that Sascha mentioned, that's like being able to have a reliable and sustainable supply of a certain strain that is one medicine, right? Because that's how it's differentiated. We're talking about a specific strain with a certain THC potency. And once the patient gets used to it, they want to have sustainable access to that strain. And we see the Demecan legacy even today, and that's like, I think, the only non-Demecan product that we still sell. And we're still selling it, and it's still very present in the market. And I think it's because a lot of people got used to it, and it's a very solid product, although I think it might be overpriced given the competition now. But I think that's where a lot of cultivators struggle. And I think that's also where a competitive advantage can be for some of the legacy cultivators, like the experienced Canadian companies, or now even us, and even the type 1, type 2 Demecan that we used to grow for BFARM. We now continue for ourselves, for the pharmacies, just to be able to provide patients with, the same strain that they're used to. And it's still high in demand. So it's interesting. So, and striking this balance between a reliable and sustainable supply, but then at the same time coming up with something new, something innovative, for the curious patient consumers, striking that balance, that's a bit of a tricky part. And you can only do that if you know the market well. So if you cultivate outside Germany and you want to sell to Germany, in order to get the product market fit right, you need some intelligence on the ground, be that a team here or be it a wholesale company that does the job for you. I think that's vital and that's crucial. And I think that helps us at Demecan, and it helps our growers tremendously, is that they can, just walk to the office next door and talk to our salespeople, our marketing people, and be like, what does a consumer, what does a patient really want? What's the demand looking like, and how is it changing? Because it is really word by mouth. There's no real data. And maybe one last point where I'll challenge Sascha a little bit is the knowledge on the product. I still think the high THC potency, that's still the number one driver. Sometimes I'm surprised like how insufficient some of the patients are, or maybe some of the doctors are. It's like surprisingly still, I think, one of the top arguments. Like, we have grown wonderful strains with a low THC potency, just doesn't sell as much as the blockbuster 29, 31% THC strains.
Right. No, thank you. Thank you for that. So look, I'm going to move the discussion more to company specific questions. Stefan, I'll start with you. Maybe just for those that are not so familiar out there, remind people, how big is your online menu? If you have metrics of your market share, what consumer insights can you share from your platform, partly based on what Constantin was saying there. Remind us of the ease of ordering and home delivery in your online platform, timing, cost considerations. Let's start with that.
Yeah, so we offer around 100 strains. We have also, extracts. We offer capsules, but the bulk of the sales is really in flower. Yeah, the ease of use is I think one of the biggest selling points. You can order online. You don't need to go to the pharmacy and pick anything up. We deliver it right to your door. Because this is a what do you call it, magistral product, there is an actual manufacturing process that has to happen in the pharmacy. So there's a lot of people that say, well, I don't want to go to the pharmacy, give them my prescription, and then wait 10, 20 to half an hour until they make it. I'd rather just send it in and they'll send it to me the next day. Because of our location in Leipzig, there's a DHL hub for Europe around the corner, so we have very late cutoff times. And 95% of our orders, even though they're not express, arrive the next day anyway. So that's kind of the ease of use that we have with Grünhorn for the patients. Obviously, there are some people that want it the same day. It's something that we're working on in the future, but we're only going to offer it once we can scale it to all customers. So,
Do you charge for delivery?
under a certain basket size, yes. But most of the orders are over the basket size. So,
right. Look, I mean, for those of you on the line that want to ask questions, I prefer you email them to me or put them on the Twitter chat or even on the chat here on Zoom. That's the best way to do it, if you don't mind. Stefan, can you talk about, again, because it's a German market, people are not so familiar. How do you deal with payment systems? How do people pay you, or do you give them credit? How do you handle payments in your platform?
yeah, so a lot of people that aren't familiar with Germany. Germany has a very big culture for bills. So like you make an order online, and they send you a bill, and you can pay it in 30 days. So a lot of our patients do that. In order to kind of hedge the credit risk, any new patients will have to pay up front. So either with credit card, bank transfer, or Klarna has like a system where you can do it with an invoice as well. But then on the second or third purchase, they can use our bill service as well.
Right. Look, and I'm sorry to stay here with more company-specific questions, Stefan, but given the number of new online pharmacies we're seeing, I mean, what would you say to your customers? What are your advantages compared to some of those new online platforms?
So we've been doing this since 2020. We have the process completely down. We're kind of focused on more of a service and more of a premium experience. We offer glass instead of plastic. A lot of people deliver in plastic bags. Plastic reduces the THC %, which is something that we've researched in our lab. So we offer glass. We put a Boveda tab in to make sure the moisture works. And most of the orders, are out within 48 hours. So it's kind of the ease of use that we're offering on, a process that's rather complicated.
Look, and two last questions, Stefan. So in terms of your own suppliers that want to sell on your platform, are you adding more suppliers or cutting? Are you very restrictive in terms of how many suppliers you have? And then you have this separate wholesale business, which in a way you're competing with your own suppliers, right? So how do you handle that? And how big is the wholesale business as part of your overall strategy?
Yeah, the wholesale business makes up 25% of our sales. And that's, with all third-party products, a little bit of our own branded products, but mostly third-party. Yeah, suppliers, we're actually reducing constantly. It's a very manual process filling cannabis orders. We have partial automation, which means there's machines that have to be cleaned after every batch. So if I could wish for something, I'd wish for only 10 to 15 products. That'd be a dream. Obviously not realistic. So we're closer to cutting companies than we are adding new ones. Just because the more products we have, the more the sales diversify among different products, and the more cleaning we have to do of those machines. So in order to increase output, less is more.
Thank you. Constantin, moving on to some Demecan specific questions. You talked about doubling domestic production. Maybe remind us, if you can, in terms of your total sales, how much is that imported versus your own domestic production? Talk about what changes you're making to your supply chain in terms of the import side, if you can talk about that.
Yeah, sure. Can't give you hard numbers here, of course, but in relation, I think it's still 80% imports and only 20% domestically cultivated. And look, it's the market next year is probably we're looking at 100 tons or so. I want to have 50% market share, so I need to sell like 15 tons of dried flower. If I can only cultivate 4.2 tons, that means over 2/3 I still have to import. So import will still remain a big part of our game. I think our advantage, hopefully, is that we can bring the cultivators' know-how to selecting the right cultivators from which we import to maintain basically a more or less homogeneous product portfolio, where we do not have too many deviations regarding quality. I do claim that our Demecan grown, German grown cannabis is state of the art, is top quality. But there's also some craft growers out there in Canada that we can still learn from. But again, 2/3 will probably still be resting on imports, and it's 1/3 domestic cultivation.
Look, and I know it's hard to generalize on the supply chain, Constantin, but is Canada still producing the best quality? And when you think of other countries that are emerging, like North Macedonia, Colombia, Lesotho, maybe, you know, lower cost, that's advantage, but not the same quality, or maybe that's just my wrong interpretation. Any thoughts on that, how the supply chain is evolving in terms of countries?
Yeah, I think in Canada, you can get everything. You can get value product, very good price. You can get the premium craft. So I'd always first turn to Canada, but other countries are definitely evolving. I haven't seen this super great craft product coming out of Portugal or South Africa or Colombia yet, but it's definitely going to happen at some point. That really depends on the cultivator. So you have to go there, meet the people, you know, see if they do two things: know how to cultivate and do understand regulation. Because the other thing that's true that Sascha mentioned at the very beginning, it is, you know, a regulatory hustle, and we are still talking about a medicinal product here. And even if you grow the greatest cannabis in the world, you don't know how to, you know, get it registered and get it across to Germany, exported, etc. It doesn't help you very much. And that's the challenge, because usually these two skill sets, they don't come together.
In terms of your
Isn't
route
there
to
an EU
market,
law?
go on,
Isn't there an EU law? Sorry, just one thing that came up a couple hours ago. Isn't there an EU law that says the cultivation within a country has to have priority over imports? So the only reason why in the EU Germany is allowed to import is because the demand is actually larger than what the the cultivation within the country is.
Yeah, it always was. I think there's a paragraph in the UN Single Convention that refers to the narcotic regulation, because they want to limit like cross-border transactions with narcotics. They say like only if you really need to import any narcotic, you should do so, but please try to, you know, get it from within your own country. Since we can't in Germany, we import. You know, at the very beginning, Demecan said we can grow it all. I could grow 100 tons. But of course, our Canadian lobbyists, they were strong enough to make a point for Canada. So the whole importing game started in the first place. And, you know, it's a funny thing. I'm not tired to mention that nobody has ever exported any cannabis to Canada, right? Or to the Netherlands, right? It's funny that the Germans, you know, let the rest of the world treat them the way they let them treat. But that's the way it is right now.
It's no longer a narcotic anyway, right? In Germany, but I know it's a different connotation there. Look, in terms of your route to market, Constantin, I don't know how much you can share here, but do you have your own sales force? Do you supply directly to pharmacies, or do you rely on third-party distributor wholesalers like even Grünhorn? Can you talk about that briefly?
Well, we definitely sell to Grünhorn, and we love to work with Stefan and the team. But we do have our own distribution. We have our own other pharmacy clients, and we do have a sales force out there that is sales representatives that talk to doctors. I think you know, doctor education is a big pillar of our whole company. We even host seminars at our facility. Pretty much every month, there's a group of doctors that we educate. I think that is key, especially in the long term. And that goes back to that very, very crucial, important, and stable growth of, you know, the honest, diligent patients that we've always seen from the very beginning. It's a good market. It was a good market from the very beginning, but it grows a little slower than people expected. And to keep that growth, you know, it's a question of education and destigmatization, and that's we do focus a lot on that.
Thank you. Sascha, let's start with questions about route to market, right? I mean, there's what we talk two different channels, right? The doctor-led channel and there's a patient-led channel. How do you, you know, attack those two channels? Talk about your capabilities in that sense.
Yeah, exactly. It's actually two markets, if you wish. So the majority of the dried flower market is run through self-payers, and is run through a conversation between, well, let's say, there's a conversation ongoing between pharmacist and patient. For sure, doctors or teleclinics still writing the prescriptions, right? So, but it's a different patient journey than you have in the classical reimbursed segment, and especially when it comes to more innovative form factors like extracts, purified extracts, or even further form factors like a sublingual spray. you are still initiating the treatment by a physician, and that physician has to be visited, and that physician has to be convinced of a treatment option as you do it with any painkiller or other product you run through medical systems. We attack both segments with different sales channels. So it's definitely a more key account approach, a more digital approach to the self-paying dry flower market, while the more extract or innovative market is more like a typical pharmaceutical day-by-day business with sales reps knocking doctors, causing prescriptions, and then the prescription is filled by a normal distribution network as you know it from the pharmaceutical system. It's maybe the market slower growing, but it's also the more stickier market, because here you're talking to very chronically ill patients who would repeat the prescriptions after they are satisfied on a very regular basis. So the one prescription you win is a prescription you will have for the next 10 to 20 years, which is why we focus on both market segments.
Just on that point, stay on the reimbursed market. Is the reimbursed market still mostly extracts, 90% extracts, or is that incorrect interpretation? And is it growing or is it flat?
It is growing, and we are growing in that segment. There is maybe 70% extracts. Again, there's no official numbers, but a mainstream doctor shies away a bit from a dried flower, which has to be consumed in a way he's not used to prescribe medicine. So he would favor an extract, or what we see recently, he definitely favors then a sublingual spray, as we can mimic the galenic of a flower, a fast onset, but he sees a presentation which is more controllable. So that's something we see more openness in the doctor community.
And just on your supply chain, Sascha, I know you touched on it before, but just to remind us, where are you importing from if you can? How many suppliers? How are you expanding the supply chain?
Yeah, so it's now, well, I was actually silently counting here. It's now 25 suppliers out of 5 continents in the meantime. So we've actually expanded very carefully in the last, I'd say, 1.5 years. We also have deepened relationships to certain suppliers. I think Constantin is right. There's also a conversation. There is a mutual education, because cultivating is not the same as selling or distributing. So we are also in very, very close relationship to some of the suppliers, reacting to market conditions, teaching each other, and actually vertically integrating without actually integrating. So I think we increased trust relationship to many suppliers. We broadened our network, and we made sure that we get access to all type of categories we feel demand in the market.
Can you explain, please, advantage of you having an EU GMP facility in Germany? And I think that's only 2 or 3, right? But go on.
Yeah, well, you have to fulfill GMP criteria to be able to sell into the German market. And if you have a certified manufacturing site, you're more flexible in your imports, and you have the expertise in-house to be able to control your quality management system and making sure that you actually distribute product at highest quality. So having a manufacturing site gives me, from a more commercial point of view, better and faster and more flexible access to supply networks.
Thank you. Look, I'm going to move the discussion now to funding. In terms of what you can disclose, Stefan, I'll start with you. Can you talk about how are you funding your business? Is cash burn an issue for you? How would you describe market conditions to access debt or equity capital? And if you're doing a fundraise, maybe you can talk about it here, but go on.
You address
Yeah, we are.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Didn't hear the name. Sorry, Stefan.
That's all right. Don't worry about it. Yeah, we are doing a fundraise. Finished due diligence with a couple parties. But yeah, it's always seems to be strategic kind of partnerships. A lot of the private equities, they're very interested. They think the numbers are exciting. They think the field is exciting. But when it does come to the compliance side, a lot of them kind of shy away from cannabis. Even though it's it's medical. I mean, it's a pharmacy. There's GMP. But we see that most of the capital going into cannabis is actually from strategic partners that have either themselves done cannabis in the US or Canada, or are still active in cannabis. But yeah, we are doing a raise, and so far pretty much self-funded. We haven't done a big deal yet. Most of it is just debt.
Can you talk about how big is the raise?
20 million.
Okay. Thank you. Constantin, on the same question.
Yeah, no, we're not fundraising. We're fully funded, actually. We do have enough money. We do have access to credit lines that we're not drawing these days. So situation is good. We're profitable. don't need cash. We actually turned down an investor that we felt wasn't a fit and asked for too much. I am always looking or interested in strategic partnerships. If it's like, a strategic investor that could be helpful and, bring some intelligence to us, to the team, always happy to have that discussion, but currently not raising.
Sascha, same question for you.
Yeah, kind of in the middle. So we are funded but raising, means we are cash positive as we speak. We can finance our operations, but we do see the moment to scale. We have more demand on our facility than we can fulfill. We do see some interesting buy and build options. So we are in a Series B raise of 50 million, but 15, not 50, 15, but not to fund our operations. Once again, we are capable of doing that on our own, but to use the momentum to scale what we have built.
Right. Thank you. Look, I'm going to take some of the questions that came online. I'm going to paraphrase 2 or 3 questions that are on the same topic. Anyone can answer here. So the question is more about
just maybe before you do that, Pablo, I like the buy and build thing that Sascha mentioned. Who do you think is building, Sascha? What last year, was it last year we had a chat about like, okay, when is the market getting together, what's going to happen? Like, do you see anything happening there? Is that
well, it depends on what you're focusing on. So I see a number of targets I would be interested in. I can't tell you the big M&A movements, but I do see the business I'm in and the medical business some interesting expansion moments. Yes.
Okay. Interesting. I'm always wondering, like some groups are forming right now, right? It's like there's like
so
no, of course. I know that Curaleaf made a move, and ever since they've been very active across Europe. I wonder like what's their next step. I know that Sanity has been funded by British American Tobacco or / Organigram, so that's another bigger player out there. There's still the Canadians hanging around. That'd be interesting to see how the market's going to develop.
That's precisely the question here. And again, I'm paraphrasing 2 or 3 questions that came in. Is like, what advice or message would you have for those big Canadian LPs, right? Say Aurora, Tilray, Canopy Growth. And I'm saying this in a neutral way, right? Like, are they equipped to continue to do well in that market in Germany on their own, or should they be looking for local partnerships? How are they doing? What comments you want to make in that sense? Because like you said, Constantin, there is room for perhaps consolidation or more partnerships, right? But if companies are doing well on their own, why would they need that? So any thoughts you may have on the subject? Maybe Constantin, you want to start and expand on what you just said.
Well, the Canadians who are here, I don't think they need any German partners, and I haven't looked at the numbers. They're public companies, so I don't even know if they're doing so well, but I think better than before, and definitely it's not because of the German operations that they're having problems. We were looking at American companies and wondering if ever any American company would make a move, a US company would make a move. But other than Curaleaf, really haven't seen much. But I think that's going to happen. That's going to happen next, and I have a feeling that we'll see something there this year. It would be silly to miss out on that market growth in Germany. And for us, this is exciting times, right? We're talking about 80 to 100 tons a year, but these numbers are ridiculous. We're still at the very infancy of the market if you compare it to the US, even single states within the US, right? If you look at the state like Florida, with a population 1/4 of Germany, they do way more volume, way more market size than Germany. So there's a lot of growth potential, and I know Americans will come over fairly soon.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, we don't have good exact patient numbers, but it's way less than 1% penetration, right? And you have 3-4% in some US states. Sascha, on the same question about what message or advice would you have for some of those large Canadian LPs?
No, well, they are not all the same, right? So there, as Constantin said, there's some large Canadian LPs who have organizations on the ground, but there's some who do not have yet. The market has changed since the first Canadian came to Germany. So to now buy a GDP license and build it from scratch is maybe not the best idea, while German operators have built up and became stronger. And then, let's say, if you have management teams and companies running the German market perfectly well, as we show in our growth figures, why would you start on scratch but not partner with such a German company, right? So as I would not enter the Canadian market as we speak, but always partner with a Canadian company if I wish to, I would do the same also if I would see the very interesting market figures. I would watch out for one of the three you're looking at because I think our figures are showing that we know how to serve the European market and feel invited to partner with us.
Yeah. Stefan, I don't know if you want to chip in also on the same subject. In terms of
I think Aurora is doing very well, but I do believe that the German operators are surpassing all the Canadian companies in Germany. They know the market better. They know how to. I mean, it's it's startups versus very large corporate companies that may not, in such a dynamic market, may not be able to switch strategies as fast. So Aurora is doing well, I gotta say, but I do feel that the Germany companies are very strong. And I agree with Constantin. I think once the Americans realize that the growth is no longer there, they need to start looking at other markets. And I mean, the German cannabis market is medical, but it's fascinating. I mean, you can get a prescription very easily. Anybody can get a prescription, and you pay less per gram than you do in the black market, which isn't the case in the US. The US, because of the tax system, it's much more expensive than the black market. So here, our average gram selling price is $7.75. That's significantly under the 10 euros that you buy on a black market, and the quality is obviously way better. You know exactly what you're getting. You know what strain, what terpenes, what THC percentage, and it's pharma grade. So, I mean, I think this market is it is medical, but I think a lot of people are kind of ignoring the fact that this is a very good contender to the black market. So I think once the Americans start to realize under Trump, it might not be as great of a future for their companies or for the growth of their companies. They might start to look overseas, and Germany is definitely the best option in Europe.
Right. And then, like you said, you can pretty much do it all from your home as a patient, right? I mean, you get your prescription online, you get the product delivered to your home, so you have that is. Can I just, not to push back, but on the point of, that you say about some of the Canadian companies, they've been there quite some time, some of them, right, for quite a long time, so they probably should know the market very well. So why would you say that they don't know the market as well as some of the German companies? And I'm not pushing back, but just to get more color there.
Well, yeah, I mean, they have very large structures. I mean, it's thousands of people that work in these companies, and this market is so dynamic; it's changing constantly. I mean, if you look at what changed from the 1st of April, I mean, this is a fully different market. All the numbers changed: the average basket size, the pricing, the product segmentation, the legal structures. I mean, this is a fully different market than what we had in the narcotics market. And some of these companies are just too big and too slow to kind of take advantage of these situations. So, I mean, the German players are obviously a lot smaller. They're not, in this huge structure of publicly traded companies. So they can take advantage of quick changes in the market. But there's also a lot of gray areas that they can participate in that a large company that's publicly traded might not want to touch.
Understood.
So.
And they lost one of their best men, Sascha, to Canify. So how can they succeed now?
Okay, we want to stop there. Okay, anyway, but that's good. Sascha, anything you want to add?
No, really nothing to add. I think maybe some of the international companies were looking at selling their stocks, be it out of Canada, out of Portugal, for too long, and might have missed the moment when you have to diversify your portfolio, and some did that better than others. As let's say, the market has become more demanding, and you have to satisfy more companies, and that's what you see now in the missing growth, right?
Understood. One last question: when we were talking about consolidation, U.S. companies or Canadian companies, what about pharmaceutical companies? Are you seeing pharmaceutical companies trying to get into a market, or not really, Sascha, or anyone?
There's interest. I think they're still struggling to tick their respective boxes, even though we have seen some interesting announcement lately. So we have seen Sandoz moving into one very interesting development program. We have just partnered with a company called Alveon to jointly develop an inhalation device. We are talking to some family offices. There was always interest by certain companies. But again, cannabis is still a very young structure. Pharmaceutical companies are very special and very, very careful when it comes to picking the next big product. I see some synergies with the generic companies like the Sandoz, like the Tevas, where cannabis as a category might become more doable and feeling right. I struggle a bit to see innovative pharmaceutical companies like the Pfizers, Novartises of this world. I'm not sure cannabis is a segment for them, as they can't protect it. There's no IP. So again, we're talking to some generic houses, but it's not a category I see pharmaceuticals jumping massively on.
Thank you. Look, I know we're on the hour mark. I mean, thank you very much to our speakers. I'll take closing remarks here from each one of you. I'll start with Constantin. And if you can, Constantin, one of the questions that came online, which I think we answered before, is, are you seeing price pressure in the market, and is it going to get worse? I think we've answered it, but if you can also touch on that. And any closing comments from you, Constantin? Thanks.
Yeah, sure. So far, price pressure is not what concerns us. There's still a rather shortage of supply and getting the right product into patients' hands. Like, we want to serve the demand for top quality product. And hopefully we at Demecan, we can do it with the product we cultivate in Germany. And you should just come over and see for yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Constantin. Stefan, closing remarks.
Yeah, I think Germany is a very interesting market. I think it's as close to legalization as you can really get, and it's a great contender for the black market. So I think a lot of people are trying to compare it to the US, but I think it has better chances. So I also think there's going to be a lot of consolidation the next 6 to 12 months, and I think a lot of American companies will also come over and be a part of that.
Stefan, do you see you expanding your wholesale business as a percentage of total revenues, or that mix 75-25 that you talked about will remain in place online and?
Definitely, I think there's going to be some growth on our side from our own branded products. We're going to slowly start to increase, what we offer under Grünhorn brand, and there's also 1 or 2 brands that we're going to come out with as well. So definitely.
Got it. Thank you, Sascha. Closing remarks.
Well, kind of the same. I'm now in cannabis for 7 years, which in Europe is kind of a long time in the cannabis market. We were all waiting for this moment to happen. So right now we see the dynamic. The train is definitely accelerating. And as I assume we have more listeners from the other side of the Atlantic, well, come over, look yourself, feel invited to partner with wonderful companies as you have on the phone. The momentum is now, and it's now the momentum to scale up.
Well, that's great. Thank you very much to our 3 speakers, and thank you everyone for joining. Everyone have a good day. Definitely Germany, very interesting market. For those that follow all these events, you have ICBC Berlin, Mary Jane coming up, then Cannabis Europa. See many of you there. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone.